Well, Russ, here we are, recording on July 4th, 2021, also known as Independence Day in the United States, or America's birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
USA.
America. And
yeah.
Happy 4th of July, Mike.
Right. Happy 4th of July to you. I have my, just to celebrate, I got a special Liberty Ale here that I'm drinking
nice.
from some of my beer. And to make this beer even more special, I personally know the brewer who made this. That's a guy that lives here in Japan with us, Alan Kornhauser. He works for Pabst Blue Ribbon, but he's this is his recipe apparently.
Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah, but he's the international Pabst Blue Ribbon, not the American one.
Whenever I think of Pabst Blue Ribbon, I think of the what was it? Allman Brothers Live at the Fillmore East. Back cover where the roadies got paid with Pabst Blue Ribbon to pull all the equipment back out, and they didn't look too happy. But
they didn't look too happy. Well, these days, I don't know. It's become the hipster beer, apparently. So.
Yeah. Funny how things are like that. I've got the great American beverage from Kentucky, the Knob Creek.
Knob Creek. Unfortunately, I finished my bottle of that, and I didn't get another one. I'm going to wait until September. It's too hot. September. I don't know. I start sweating, and I want the cold brew now. Now that it's hot and summery here. Okay. Well, anyway,
it's very hot.
Here on the USA's birthday number 245, I believe. I think, yeah, that's about right. And we have no American music.
We have no American music
that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, funny how that
what
is.
What were we thinking? But it's funny how things worked out, because we just did an interview with Gil Rose, who is the conductor of the Boston Modern Orchestra Project in Boston, and they record mostly American orchestral music. And we're going to have this big American music conversational extravaganza posted on Friday if you live in Asia, and Thursday if you live in in the Americas somewhere.
Yeah,
Thursday evening.
He's like the Captain America of modern American classical music.
I guess he'd be the captain of modern American music, which makes him a kind of Captain America.
Superhero of modern American music.
Yeah, let me tell you, that's and it's a worthwhile interview to hear. It's really some project. They've made over 80 recordings already, and they just keep coming. And they're mostly of American composers, a lot that you and I even haven't heard of. Yeah. And we grew up there, and I know quite a bit about even obscure American composers, but he's dug a lot deeper than either of us. So there's some discoveries in there.
Yeah,
all right, and that's later this week. It'll be our salute to American music. Okay, so and as well as just an interesting conversation all around. Anyway, we get into some interesting topics like the wonders of Warner Brothers cartoon music.
Yeah,
which is really fantastic.
It was a good conversation. So listeners, please do check that out. And it'll be dropping Friday here in Japan time, Thursday in the States.
Thursday evening. Yeah, in the States and in the Americas in general. And if you live in Europe or Africa or somewhere like that, then it depends on how late you stay up or how early you get up when it will be when it'll be posted. But it'll be the wee hours of Friday morning, I think, for all of you.
That'll be interview 2, and we've got interview 3 coming up later in this month. We'll be going back in time to Europe and discovering a forgotten composer who is now being recorded again. And we'll give you some more details on that. That'll drop around the time the album is released, which I think is July 23rd. So more details on that to follow with a kind of music historian and an up-and-coming, already well-known, but probably great things to come, conductor from Europe. And you can look forward to that. That's ready to go too. As soon as the album is released, we can't give you any more details because we're sworn to secrecy.
We are sworn to secrecy, yeah.
From a label.
I've got to say, I just want to just throw this out there. I'm starting to wonder if this whole podcast isn't just a big mistake, because now we're starting to interview people. I'm learning all this new thing. And as you know, I am very acquisitive in my, my CD collecting, my musical things. Yeah, I'm a bit of a CD hoarder, let's say. I'm not a hoarder. I'm not hoarding them. Although I kind of am, because I'm afraid they're all going to disappear. It's all going to be digital, and then somebody else is going to be controlling it for you. But now learning about, those recordings that you were talking about, and then all the American recordings that the American Horror Source. I mean, I'm fascinated. I want to hear every one of them. And this is going to cost a lot of money.
Yes, it's a price of entry.
I don't know. I think I was maybe better off before we started doing this. I don't know. Yeah, I'm learning a lot. I'm really enjoying that. It's nice to be learning. I think I always wanted to be like a lifelong student. In a way,
you need a benefactor.
Yeah, students often ask me why did I become a teacher? I didn't really become a teacher. I just kind of wound up in it. But I think you become a teacher because you like being a student. Because you're still technically, depending on what you're teaching, I mean, you're still learning, because the students ask you questions, and now you're starting to have to think about, I wonder why that is. You got to come up with an answer.
Well, I remember all the horrible teachers I had, and then
just there were those.
The handful of really good ones who, left me something to take away. So,
but I've taught music classes before, and students would ask these, just these questions about, like, say, a work we listen to, or about a composer, and they're often really probing questions that I hadn't bothered to answer, and now the student has asked it, and I have to kind of think of an answer. It's like I got to do some more research, and I rather enjoy that. I kind of like
makes you think,
finding out about these things. Yeah, I think it's true with the because we choose some music to listen to every week, and usually when I'm listening to music these days, when I was doing my master's degree, I was like listening really carefully and kind of making notes on certain passages and things like that. And once I got the degree, I was like, oh, I'm not listening to music like that anymore. Okay, it was just too much work. I was tired all the time. So now I just kind of, I have the kind of information in the back of my head somewhere, and I just kind of listen to it with that understanding. But now, because of the podcast, I'm not doing that, but I'm listening more carefully, and it's rewarding. It's kind of good to be doing this again, especially in the jazz, which I don't listen to all that much of. So now suddenly my whole jazz vocabulary has expanded because of this podcast too. So I'm hearing a lot of other things.
I like it. It's helping me not only direct my listening, but focus on certain things. And then I usually try to, once we decide what we're going to use for the week's content, I listen to it once casually.
Yeah, I do that too.
Just to get the emotional effect of it, maybe even twice. And then I go back for a more detailed analysis and try to identify what I'm hearing and relate it to, what I know and what I've heard before and like that. So I think I need, both types of listening approaches in order to get the full grasp of material.
You kind of preload it, you listen to it in the background somewhere first, and so there's already like a kind of sense memory of it in your mind, and then when you listen to it closely, it's kind of already familiar. But you have
a map, a mental map of where it's going, and that helps you figure it out.
Yeah, especially useful with new music that you've never heard before.
Yeah, which we're getting a lot of all the time. That's the great thing. Yeah.
We got some more of that coming up next week. This week, new music for me, but there's no new.
A lot for me too, because I just spun the dial this week and dove in. So, I'll talk more about that on Jazz later.
I sort of did too.
Before we jump in with the first classical recordings, as usual, I'd like to remind the listeners that in our episode description, you're going to find links to all the music this week. Everything's available on streaming. And so there's Spotify and Apple Music for what we'll talk about. And also at the top of the description is a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer. And this is episode 21. So playlist 21. And you can follow us at username Adult Music Podcast on Deezer. Listen to the podcast there, as well as all the other platforms, but the playlist is exclusively on Deezer. And if you can't see the full description or list on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on, please jump over to our host site, Podbean, because all the hyperlinks and descriptions are nicely laid out there, and you can see everything
one
quite
might
easily.
See artistically laid out. They look really good.
And if you enjoy
Neatly.
the podcast, please do follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. We normally put these regular episodes up on Monday morning, the following morning when I wake up after these and get it all together. And the interviews have been coming out on Fridays, but you'll be sure to not miss any episodes if you subscribe. And if you also take a few moments to give us a ranking or write a review, that will help us get higher listings in the browsing categories, which helps us get new listeners and grow the audience, which we'd really appreciate. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. And our email address is adultmusicpodcast, that's all one word, @gmail.com.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm going to share some beer info with everybody. Yeah, I learned this from Alan, actually, our brewmeister
I think I met him
friend.
once.
Yeah, you probably did.
He came to one of my gigs.
He plays like this electric mandolin.
Oh.
Yeah, I think you probably heard him play that once. I think
it's possible.
But he told me that if you get beer on tap and it's in a glass, if you see the fizz, the bubbles kind of sticking to the side of the glass, right, you've got a dirty glass. So they're now washing those glasses properly. So you can check that out. A little life information for you there.
The best beer on tap I had was in the Czech Republic, and
I bet that was good.
They really know. Yeah, they know how to do it. Everything from the glass to the beer, just right.
Yeah, Germans like their beer too.
Germans too, yeah.
Yeah. All right, before we get into classical music, we need to mention last in the week we talked about Frederick Rzewski, who had died, and this week we have another composer death, Louis Andriessen, who was a Dutch composer, recently died. His music was it was a kind of almost rock and roll type aggressive minimalism, sort of like if you know the American composer John Adams, it's that sort of repeating rhythm sort of thing, except that his music, Andriessen's music, had this really kind of really hard kind of rock edge to it, and I really liked it. A lot of what I heard of it worth checking out. So rest in peace, Louis Andriessen.
Rest in peace.
I discovered him in my post-university years as well. Okay, when I was kind of looking for all of these things to listen to. Louis Andriessen. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, my choices for this week, I've got, like, say, a Bach recording. I've got, how should I say? I've got, a collection of various piano works with a dance theme to them. And I've got a set of harp works by the French harpist Carlos Salcedo. Don't let that name fool you. He's French. I don't know how that happened. But this Bach... The first recording here is Bach Klavierwerke by Rinaldo Alessandrini. Now, before I start talking about this recording, I got to tell you why I chose it, because it's a bit old now. Well, it's not old, but I mean, we have this kind of unwritten rule. Well, we don't have a rule. We have like kind of a template. We try to get recordings that were released in the last 3 or 4 months, and I think this one just passed the 4-month cutoff. It was released at the end of February, so it's kind of it's still relatively new. I mean, recordings are new for years in classical music, but I was we are all in Japan back to work in the office, the classroom. In other words, we're not doing online classes anymore. Okay, so this means that we have to meet people again.
That sucks.
And people now know that around town that we're doing this podcast. And I was talking to this one person, I'm not going to name who it is, who decided to talk to me about Bach. Okay, Johann Sebastian Bach's music. She likes Bach. Okay, and whenever she said the name Bach, she said it like a 2-syllable word, like she would say Bach, Bach. When I listen to Bach, and then she would like pause so she could like shape her mouth into a shape to make that awful sound. It was just horrible, and she kept saying it. It was driving me crazy. Okay, it was kind of it was the exact opposite of Bach's music. Okay, it was like a horrible sound. All right, and I felt every time she said that word, I felt like I was like one of the shorter Bach works was being taken away from me. Okay, so as like kind of a remedy, I was like, oh man, I have to get these works back. So I located this recording, which I had gotten earlier in the year by Rinaldo Alessandrini, and it's a set of works for the harpsichord. We're in the harpsichord again. We've got a lot of harpsichord recordings.
3 weeks in a row here, yeah.
3 weeks in a row. Well, they all came out in groups. Now we have piano recordings coming out. We're going to probably be doing a lot of those in the near future. Anyway, these are all short harpsichord works, and I wanted to just replace the wonderful short Bach works in my mind. You know, and that's what this is a program of. It's sort of it's an interesting program the way he's put this together. It starts out with a very short preludium, a prelude, usually less than a minute long. Then he does one of the inventions. These are 2-part inventions. They're counterpoint, which you may have learned if you were ever a piano student. Okay, these are often taught to, well, not quite beginner piano students, but students toward the, starting to venture off into the more difficult repertoire. Then comes a sinfonia, which is one of the 3-part inventions. They're officially called sinfonia. Then we get a prelude and fugue from the Well-Tempered Clavier Book 1, and then a prelude and fugue from the Well-Tempered Clavier Book 2, and then he ends with some kind of miscellaneous work, multi-movement work. And in 2 cases, it's a fantasia. And in one of them, I guess this would be the centerpiece. There's a sonata, okay? And he does this pattern 3 times. Okay, so it's like kind of like 3 layers of the same kind of a series of types of works. Another interesting thing about this program is that all of these works are in a minor key. That he kind of chose works in minor keys for each one of these. And so it's a very oddly, it doesn't sound dark, because some of these some of the rhythms on these are kind of dancey, so they do sound upbeat, even though there's that little kind of darker tone to it.
So the uniqueness here is that the program is organized by key signature. So
yeah,
you have various types of compositions that are grouped because they share this common key, and I guess that's a unique kind of programming
it's
idea.
rather clever, I thought.
And why not? You stay in the same tonality, but then you have a different type of composition approach.
Yeah. I rather liked that, because these are very short works. They're a minute, 2 minutes long, and then there are 1 or 2 that have a multi-movement that'll be about 10 minutes long total. How do you hear these usually? If you're going to hear the inventions, you're going to hear all of them. Somebody's going to record all of them, and on one disc. And this kind of makes it a little interesting. It isolates certain of these short works out of their normal context and kind of puts them in something else. Now, these aren't random works. These are all, there's a pattern to them, to the way he's programmed this. You can almost think of it as a big, if you want to think of it as like a 3 movement thing made of like smaller little parts, like this wheels within wheels kind of thing.
I wrote, it's a big Bach buffet. That's what I wrote. But it's kind of like
nice alliteration.
It's all minor keys, and as you say, I actually prefer minor keys in a lot of Baroque music, especially with harpsichord. But what I was listening to, it was raining all the time when I was listening.
It was raining all week here.
It's
including
a bit moody,
today.
moody and broody. And so I would recommend you break this up and maybe listen to each part rather than going. But if you go through all of the, kind of 3 parts in one session, you might,
let's say the 3 sections.
You might feel like you belong to the Addams Family or something, like a character.
All that harpsichord playing. All right. Now you mentioned that the Addams Family, and this is kind of a nice kind of segue for me. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about Rinaldo Alessandrini himself. He's someone who really did a lot. His recordings did a lot to shape my understanding and taste in like Italian Baroque music. This really is his specialty. He's been recording since, I guess, the 80s. I think I first came became aware of him in the mid '90s. When I just came to Japan, or maybe just before that, because I was like, so something about Japan. I remember one of the reasons why I have this really deep understanding of classical music is not just because of education, but because when I first came to Japan, I didn't really speak the language. I didn't have all that many friends. So I just stayed home and read about music and listened to it all the time. And I still do that, really. I guess you could say I still don't have friends. I kind of liked the
anyway.
I know. I like the lifestyle. The
older you get, the fewer friends you need. So that's just the way it is.
As long as you have your electronic equipment working, okay, I think you'll be all right. As long as your ears hold up. Anyway, but he's mostly a researcher and a conductor. All right, so he'll research this music. He'll put together these performing scores. He has this group Concerto Italiano that plays them, and he reintroduced a lot of this Baroque repertoire back. Baroque music back into we shouldn't say the repertoire, but back into circulation, let's say. We can hardly call it the repertoire. And a lot of that early Italian Baroque music is really exciting. It's kind of
I like
spare. It's not as busy as say Bach's music is. It's got a brightness to it, and I really enjoy hearing it. So there's that, and then there's his harpsichord playing. He I remember back in the day he did 3 recordings of keyboard works, Italian keyboard works. Baroque Italian keyboard, so the harpsichord and the organ. And I remember especially the organ recording because he played on this very old organ in an Italian church, and it was one of those organs where it wasn't a modern one. So when he'd press the key, you'd actually hear the wind kind of blasting through the pipe before the sound actually kind of comes out. I thought it was really cool. I really liked it a lot. They're very different than the contemporary American organs, which are made for power. I often have visions of the organist slamming down on the bass key, the bass the floor, the bass on the floor, and bringing the whole church down, crumbling down around him as he kind of plays. These kind of organs don't do that. In fact, a lot of them were recently. I'm really off on a tangent now. A lot of them weren't even electric. They had to. They've made them electric recently, but in the past, before there was electricity, you had to have some people in the basement generating electricity by riding bicycles or something like that while the organist is playing. So during a mass,
or something for the air,
during a mass, the organist would be playing, and there'd be people in the basement pedaling away, making sure the organ could be heard.
The penitent man rides the bicycle in the basement.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, just the wackiness of the past, let me tell you. All right. Anyway, back to this particular harpsichord recording. Now, those old recordings, I discovered so much new music, and then later on, I heard other people pick them up, and those recordings were all better. Alessandrini he's really a scholar. All right, first, and conductor. He does research, and he's really good at it. I've heard interviews with him, and he's what he says is interesting, but his way of saying it really isn't. It's very scholarly. He's very dry, basically. All right, and his harpsichord playing is really not terribly interesting. He has this way of when you hear people play, sometimes they'll be playing in this rhythm, and then if the passage gets all sort of difficult, they have to kind of work a way to get their fingers around it, and they'll sort of slow down, and then when they get out of it, it's sort of they're on the freeway again, and they speed up, and he does a lot of that, and it drives me a little crazy. He's not a subtle harpsichord player, so they're probably there are better performers out there. So if you're looking for finesse, you kind of want to go somewhere else, I think. But I think this is I enjoyed this this album because of the program and the generally the playing. It's just sort of somebody playing through. It sounds like he's really just playing through this music. I mean, he's got an approach, and he does use the various mutes on his harpsichord to subtle effect. It's not very obvious when he's using it. I think he just likes that harpsichord sound and just keeps it going. So all in all, it's really just a traversal of these songs. I thought the performance of the sonata in the second section of works was especially good. This seems to be the centerpiece of the album. It's the longest work on the album. And one thing that really stood out for me is the very end. You always remember the end. If you have a good ending, right, people tend to go away with a good feeling. But the ricercar, he does a ricercar a tre voci in C minor from the musical offering. And at the very end, on the very last notes, he switches to like a muted sound, and kind of sends us off that way. And I thought that was a really nice touch. Okay. So this is pretty much your standard, Addams Family harpsichord sound. You're not getting a lot of variation here. And he does kind of tend to slow down and speed up at odd times. One of my piano teachers used to call that, he would call that kind of rhythm humpy. He'd say, "Oh, it sounds humpy." He didn't like, when I was playing, he would say, "Oh, it sounds humpy. You got to smooth that out." That sort of thing. So he's a bit of a humpy player as a harpsichordist. But nevertheless, charming, because I just love this artist in general. I'm just happy to hear him. I would recommend this. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to people who are really not familiar with the harpsichord. I think you'd want to go for a more finesse player who can really come out with these beautiful sounds, maybe on an exceptionally good instrument. I should probably look at what this instrument is. Doesn't
you're doing
come
that
up right away.
Yeah. I generally enjoyed, I thought the playing was not riveting, but engaging, and I liked it. I was drawn into the sound because this is the third week with harpsichord recordings, and so I was comparing the sound with the previous recordings, and I noticed, particularly compared to the Esfahani Bach recording we listened to a couple of weeks ago, that this has a lot more room sound in it. So it's, the Esfahani was very kind of close mic'd compared to this. And here you're getting a lot more of, whatever room or forum they're recording this in. And then a slightly annoying thing comparing even to last week's harpsichord too is this harpsichord has kind of a fuzzy tone to it. After, he plays the notes, what sustain you do get on the harpsichord. To me, it was much less clear. And I actually checked my speakers and my headphones a couple of times, like, should it sound like this? I don't know if it's the instrument or an artifact of that room sort of sound. And the other thing I noticed is there's a lot less clear attack in this recording compared to the Esfahani, and then what was it we had last week? Who
did we have? We had Jean Rondeau last week.
Yeah,
Jean Rondeau. I thought that was really beautiful. That was probably my favorite.
So
one.
I think it's not an artistic or performer thing, but maybe sort of the mic placement and recording artifact. But I found it, in comparison, a little bit less appealing than the previous weeks. Although I found the playing, engaging, and then I did like this sort of arrangement of, but when you have
I like that too. That was what attracted me, really.
Yeah, when you have a long program of Bach music, it's easy to get lost in the weeds as you're going through all these pieces. So I thought this kind of arrangement, by staying with the key-centered approach and then varying the types of compositions, had an interesting, different kind of variety, and so I enjoyed it.
Yeah, with works like the Inventions, the Sinfonias, like I said, they'll record them all together, and I don't know about those. I think he did sort of compose them at around the same time, maybe as exercises. But to just listen to them like that, it's I like having them on a single CD so that I have access to them. Oh, I want to hear this one.
Right, it's easy to find, but not necessarily the way you want to listen to it
as a program. Yeah,
exactly.
But as far as the sound goes, he's kind of a more rough. He has a more rough-hewn sort of sound to him.
Yeah, he's kind of burr on the tone. I thought it's like, I don't know if that's the instrument or what it is, or the recording technique. I'm not sure.
Yeah, in spite of the sound notes, I thought this harpsichord, maybe it was just the tone the harpsichord made. I thought it was very loud. Actually, I thought it was very.
His presence for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, his presence. So I don't know. Maybe the mics were further away, but turned up to really pick up the sound. I don't know. It just picked up room sound as well. I don't know. Hunting room sound is a good thing. You hear that anyway. Although you don't. This is a weird thing about when you go to a con, you hear all these people coughing, which drives me up a wall. But you don't hear the room sound because you just I guess you tune it out. But the mics pick it up. That's the thing. So it's part of the recording. You know?
Fill it with bodies. It's quite different too. So
yeah, but I don't think you hear it because the room sound is going into the mic and that's being put on the tape.
Right.
But you don't really hear it the same way the mic hears it when you're in the concert hall. It's sort of
that's
maybe you tune it out.
Yeah.
It's just not even making that sound when you're there. Just your ear picks it up differently.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Incidentally, that's sort of what if those of you if there's anyone out there trying to figure out 20th century music, that's sort of what John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds work for piano is all about. It's 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence in 3 movements, as it turns out, and it's just silence. And really, you're just hearing the room noise, and it's sort of like almost like a Zen exercise to listen to it because he's bringing you into this into the present. You're listening to what's happening now instead of like going into your memory and saying, "Oh, you made a mistake on that note," or whatever.
That's what I really run the noise reduction algorithm to eliminate, so I don't have to listen to that.
Right. I think with a classical recording, you want as natural a sound as possible. So I think they leave the room noise on there. I mean, we're all audiophiles. We classical listeners, we want that purest audio possible and the widest range possible too. Okay. Anything else about this? Are we done? I think we're done here. I just want to say that the recording was successful in restoring these short Bach works to memory. So this crazy person who was saying Bach.
Avoid if possible in the future. Not the recording, but the person.
We will never speak about music again with this person. All right. Oh, I'm glad that was over. All right. Anyway, next I have, and this might be, well, I don't know. This is certainly one of the more, I guess this is a week of interesting programs for me. There was that Bach, those 3 sort of sections of those works. And now I have a recording by the French pianist Lise de la Salle. And this is called When Do We Dance? It's a new release on the Naive label, which is a French label.
And the previous release was also on Naive too, right? The Bach.
Yeah, it was. Oh, we're going all Naive this week. Well, we're not. We're going somewhere else next. But 2 Naive releases this week.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So this is called When Do We Dance? And it's a set of works for solo piano. They're fairly short, all of them. And it's sort of like this musical dancing trip around the world. This is another really compelling program. All right, and it starts in the United States of all places. I guess so. We did get the United States into this program.
Yeah, we do. We have
after all
a few tokens here.
Yeah, it starts in America and with works for early, more or less, jazz piano. Okay,
Gershwin.
We start with George Gershwin. When Do We Dance? It's a transcription of the song. Mm-hmm. Okay, for solo piano. Then we get Art Tatum, T for Two, a very popular melody. Okay, and Art Tatum, you always want to listen to that left hand because he was really famous for that. That sort of striding left hand, and she's doing that on this performance. It's pretty impressive, I have to say. She's pretty solid. Next comes this was great. William Bolcom, The Graceful Ghost Rag, and I really wanted to hear this because I played this work. I have the score, and I actually did play it, so it was kind of nice to hear a professional pianist play it. You know. Mm-hmm. It kind of sounded quite a bit like the way I played it too. It's not a terribly flashy work. All right, so it's a William Bolcom wrote a series of rags or ragtime pieces in the 70s after the movie The Sting. Right. I guess there was a lot of research into that
ragtime stuff.
Yeah, revival of ragtime. So historians and scholars started to look into this early music that preceded jazz really by about 10 or 20 years. It was mostly in they were syncopated marches. They were always in 2/4 time. Yeah. Yep. And they were just basically marches with syncopation. And the marches were really big, I guess, in late 19th century America. Think of the Sousa marches. They're really famous. Okay, I guess people used to get together, and we still do that, really, at college football games, there's always a marching band.
The town gazebo, Americana, 4th of July, hot dog, apple pie.
So there you go.
I'm homesick now. Oh.
Yeah, right. Well, there you go. Well, you just got to put on some When Do We Dance by Lise de la Salle and listen to the first 4 tracks. You'll be okay. We'll be right back there. And then we have Fats Waller, Viper's Drag. Okay, now this is fantastic because we never hear these works played by, in transcriptions by classical pianists. Now, I was recently listening to an interview with Wynton Marsalis. He was talking on a podcast about jazz pianists versus classical pianists. And he kind of said that they don't translate to the other form very well generally. Some do. Keith Jarrett would be a really good example. He seems to be an excellent classical pianist as well as jazz pianist. He's very precise. He played the Bach, a lot of Bach works, as well as his jazz. Now, Lise de la Salle, she as well as other pianists that I like Marc-André Hamelin, when they play jazz or jazzy pieces, they get the feeling, the rhythm, really well. Okay, they really do get a nice jazz feeling. One of the things I notice about this though is they'll play at a really high speed, and the music won't really, the melody won't breathe. It's going so fast that there's no room in it. You know what I mean?
I was going to say
when a jazz pianist plays, they kind of there's space in there. You can kind of hear that.
I was going to save it for the end, but I was going to say I'll just say it now that I actually the jazz pieces were the ones I least enjoyed on here.
Probably because you're used to hearing actual jazz piano.
The swing, the feeling of swing, and the space in the rhythm. I just didn't think she had it. I mean, technically the playing is fine, but just the sort of room and breathing in the pieces. I liked the later program with the from especially the Piazzolla, the Ravel. And
I want to talk about the Ravel. That was a kind of a special.
I enjoyed all of that. I like the concept of a dance-centered thing, but for me, her jazz concept was, sort of the weak point for me.
Yeah, she's approaching it like a classical pianist, I think. And to be honest, even when I hear other pianists who play jazz works, they'll do the same thing. It's kind of, I think it's just kind of trained into them in the conservatory.
Yes.
They're reading a score rather than kind of, sort of building sort of a melody around a set of chords.
In a way, you have to get off the page in order to have that looseness in the music. It's a different world.
And that's what it lacks, is this kind of looseness within the tautness, because it has to be, the rhythm has to be taut. T-A-U-T. Taught. Okay, not
so those I didn't dislike them, but I thought those were the weaker. But I did really enjoy the rest of the program. So
but I want to say about these works. Well, the William Bolcom, that's a composed work, and I thought she was great in that. The other 3, When Do We Dance, Tifta, it was just wonderful to hear these, though, and I was just really happy about that, because these don't really get an outing too often.
That period of music has this kind of bright optimism and bounce in it, and even if it's not...
Sort of like early Baroque.
Even if it's not, played in the most, loose kind of jazz way, I really like that time period because it seems to be bursting with optimism and brightness, which we don't really hear. Music.
It was really odd. It was an odd time. I guess it was the end of the war. A lot of these came out, I guess, in the 1920s. The Bolcom was composed in the 70s. I know that. But this was that was Prohibition, though. It was a rough period, but it seemed to be a happy time somehow.
Yeah, you just had to know the secret knock, and you could still be happy. So
that's right. That's actually the case here in Japan today, by the way.
Indeed. Yeah.
If you know the secret knock, you're okay. All right. So anyway, after we leave Amérique, as the CD says on the back, we go to Argentine or Argentina. Now, of course, that's going to mean Astor Piazzolla, our anniversary. It's a birthday boy this year. He's 100 years old this year. This is his 100th anniversary of his birth. With Liber Tango, a very famous piece by him. Played on solo piano here. Nice, again, nice tango feeling.
I like this a lot, yes.
By the composer. And then we get 3 Danse Argentine. They wrote French for all of these. I wonder if that's the actual title he gave, by Alberto Ginastera, a composer I'm kind of interested in. And I'm really interested in his solo piano works because somebody once told me, or I read somewhere, that most pianists don't get, how to put his piano music across because it tends to be very bangy.
Right.
In the
some of
really
these
percussive bits.
There's a lot of contrast here, but yeah.
I did like the middle movement a lot. So it's 3 dances really here. It's a 3 movement work, and the first one is the dance of the old cowherd, who seems to have a heavy foot. Actually, this one's kind of a bangy one. The second one was a little dance of the delightful young girl. And it is kind of a delightful, light sort of work. I like that. I like this one the best.
It's a nice contrast with the first movement, which is sort of intense, and then you get that nice second one. And
the last one is the, I guess he's looking at the delightful girl, the dance of the cunning gaucho. Ooh, look out! He's
gaucho.
He's a little heavy too. I think this I felt like this was a little bangy as well. I don't know, as far as recording goes. All right. After that, we get Manuel de Fire. This was pretty fantastic. This is a ritual fire dance from El Amor Brujo, which is an opera, a very short opera by him, piano transcription. Memorable melodies. This is Spain now. We are now in Spain, okay, for just that one piece. And that was pretty memorable. I liked it a lot. Then comes, and this was a work I know very well, Maurice Ravel, Valse Noble et Sentimentale, the Noble and Sentimental Waltzes. And this is a series of movements based on this one waltz theme. And one of the things the thing I liked about this performance the most, now, I've heard many performances of it, and a lot of them bring the color out. And this one really highlights the waltz rhythm. I mean, she plays the opening theme, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's slowly enough for you to be able to waltz to it. Now, we're hearing concert music of, say, a ballet. If there's no actual dancers dancing, if there are no actual dancers dancing to it, they'll generally take it at a faster speed than it would normally be danced to, because they want to highlight the rhythms and things like that. That's also the case with this work generally. Okay, we'll hear it. Now it's not a dance piece, but pianists will tend to play it like the waltz rhythm will be there, but it doesn't sound like it's breathing much. It's going fast. It's a little too fast to actually dance to, and she plays it at really just the perfect speed tempo to for you to be able to imagine like a dance happening to it, and for it to breathe like a waltz does. I really enjoyed this performance a lot. Okay, it was it's probably the centerpiece of the disc. It's the longest work, and I thought it was the most enjoyable too. I liked this. Okay, after that, Camille Saint-Saëns, another anniversary guy from this year, as you will remember. He died in 1921, so it's the 100th anniversary of his death. Étude en forme de valse. So this is an étude, a study that's also a waltz. Waltz being a really big dance back then in the 19th, early 20th century, until the wars stripped that culture away. And Ravel actually wrote about that in his piece La Valse, which is an amazing 20th century work. Next, we have Bartók, one of my favorite composers. Romanian folk dances. Now, I know these in their violin and piano version. Okay, these are actually, I think they're originally for violin and piano. I hope I'm remembering the right work. But De La Salle plays them on solo piano here. These have these Romanian rhythms to them. Now, East European languages tend to accent the first syllable of their words, and that tends to happen in the musical rhythm as well. So they sound very different than Western European works, and they're a little exotic for that reason, and they really catch my ear. I really like that. These performances are they're pretty careful. The rhythms are all nicely accentuated. I thought this performance could have used a little more paprika. It needed a little more spice to it, because the spice is in the harmony.
Right.
But she really just plays this straight. It was enjoyable though. I'm not complaining. I did enjoy this performance, but it didn't really sound like these kind of Again, though, they're at a tempo that they could be danced to, I can imagine. So she takes them a little more slowly than most pianists do. After that, we go to Russia for the end of the program, first with Stravinsky's Tango for solo piano. This work is pretty interesting because it's kind of, you know, those Picasso and Braque paintings, the Cubist paintings, where they're showing you different angles of the same image, like on like a one surface or something like that. I feel like this tango is sort of like that. It's showing you kind of different aspects of the tango within this one rhythm or something like that. It's really weird. Like it's not really. It's a really there's a weird abstraction to it. It doesn't really sound like a dance work. Okay. Then we have Alexandra Scriabin, waltz in A flat major. Okay, I liked that.
Nice.
It was nice. It didn't really stand out for me, though, but it was a good performance. And last, we have Rachmaninoff, Polka Italienne, in a transcription by Gryaznov. I don't know who he is. But this was apparently, I don't know what it was originally for. The transcription is pretty colorful. Like, it gets up really high on the piano. You get these really tinkly music box sounds at certain points. It's nice. It doesn't really sound like something Rachmaninoff would do, though. I think if he transcribed it himself, it would sound different. But nice send off for this and this little musical dancing trip around the world. A highly enjoyable program. I really liked hearing all these works, and the real appeal for this recording is the program in itself. Just the way we hear all these wonderful, shortish, high, works with a highly rhythmic profile. Anyway, recommended to hear. I liked it.
Yeah, I like the dance theme. It's a nice programming idea, and I enjoyed mostly, as I said, from the Piazzolla on. I was a little bit less enthusiastic just from my expectations with Gershwin and Tatum. It's a high bar for me as a jazz sort of interpretation when you're going to do these kind of things. For me, you could have just started from the Piazzolla, and then it would have been a great recording. But I understand she wants to cover different bases. So yeah, I can appreciate that. Overall, it does take you to a lot of different places, and the variety in the program is really commendable. And nice playing, a lot of different touches and moods and different kind of rhythms. But like you say, I think in her mind, at least, from the listener's point of view, she was keeping the idea of these should all be played as if they could be danced to. And,
except for the American ones, which I thought were taken way too fast.
They're quite fast. Yeah.
I think more of an if they slowed down, they might have even worked, really a lot better. Yeah.
I would have preferred a slower tempo with a looseness and space with a little bit, maybe more,
it's kind of odd that you did it just for that part.
Yeah. Well, but enjoyable nonetheless.
Okay. Now my last choice for this week is the first recording of all harp recording that we've done on this program. Now, we don't really get too many solo harp recordings that are, I like the harp a lot, and I have quite a few harp recordings, but they're not terribly interesting unless you play the harp yourself, because they tend to be collections of works that are really well known. But in this case, we have a set of works by a single composer by the name of Carlos Salcedo. Now, he was French, and don't let his name fool you. It kind of sounds like a Spanish name. Yeah. But he was a French harpist, pianist, composer, and conductor. And if you hear if you like the harp and you find out that the person composing for the harp is French, you're going to want to run to hear that work, because the French, I don't know, they have this really great sense of the timbre of the instrument, and they're exceptionally good at writing for the flute and the harp, and especially for those two instruments together. I don't know what it is. They just pull out all the magic of these two instruments, and I think that's the case here as well. Now, Carlos Salcedo, let me tell you a little bit about him. He was born in 1885, died in 1961, so I guess he would be mainly active in the post-war period. Now,
but he died in the USA too. That's interesting.
He died in the USA. Yeah. He taught at the Juilliard School until 1937. How about that? Well, I'm willing to bet, because, of course, given the years of his of his life, he lived through 2 world wars, and I guess a lot of those people from that era wound up in the United States, most of them in California, but it seems like he was in New York. He co-founded the International Composers Guild with Edgar Varese, which is kind of an interesting partnership. Now, he lived in the modernist and really the post-war era, and this is the era when Schoenberg and Stravinsky really took over, so music was really kind of rough and intellectual and hard to listen to.
But not his
after
music,
the war.
no.
Yeah, but not his music, and that's probably why we haven't heard of him. There is a lot of great tonal music that was written after the Second World War, but we just didn't hear it because we were told that this is the this 12-tone music is the important music that's being written. So you had to hear that. But now a lot, due to scholarship, a lot of that music is being rediscovered, and some really great composers who didn't really get their day in the sun are getting it now, and that's kind of nice to see and to hear. Okay, let's talk about this. Salcedo, he's basically like Rachmaninoff. He's more of a romantic composer with sort of modern harmonies. He kind of updated his harmony into the modernist era, but he composes in a really romantic vein. These are really enjoyable, compositions. Oh, I should mention this is on the Stradivarius label, which I believe is an Italian label, and the harpist is Italian, Antonella Ciccozzi, on the harp, and a fine harpist she is. I really enjoyed these performances. But I really want to talk about the works themselves. The first work on this, there are 3 sets of works. The first one is Variations sur un thème dans le style ancien. Variations on an ancient theme, or an old style theme. All right, and it's how would you describe this? It's a set of variations on a very appealing theme, basically. Probably from the Baroque era, around that time. It's about 15 minutes long. A set of variations. They're all really enjoyable. A good beginning to the disc. Okay. Next, we come to 5 preludes. Now, these are a bit the harp. I'm getting a lot of plosives today. Wow. All right, the harp is kind of considered to be a pretty instrument, and it has a hard time. One of the reasons you don't hear too many harp recitals, it's hard to get it out of that sort of angelic sort of sound that people associate it with. Although some composers have tried, and I think this here is a bit of an approach at an attempt at that. The 5 preludes are called, and I actually looked this up on the IMSLP. These are performed. There are 5 of them. The ones we hear them in the order 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1. So she records the first one in the series. She programs the first one in the series last, and starts with number 2. Okay, so the first one that we hear is number 2, Quietude, which is a bit of a quiet piece, as suggested. Then we hear Iridescence, which is the name of the album. This is the title track, I guess you could say. Introspection. Then we have Whirlwind, which is really the end of the suite. It's a more lively sort of work. The other 2 have a bit. I can't really call them jarring harmonies. They're hardly jarring on the harp, but they're a little more spicy than what we normally get. Okay, so and they're fairly quiet works too. Iridescence and Introspection, very pretty. And then last we get the rather sad Lamentation, which is very long also. This is the one that the program, these set of pieces originally started with, and she ends with it here. It's a fairly heavy, again, given that the instrument's a harp, it's not going to come across as very weighty, but there's weight there. And this is the really the meat, I guess, of the program. This is where the harmonic content is. And then after that, we get Dessert, which is a suite of 8 dances. And she does these 8... the suite of 8 dances are all... They start in the Baroque era with a gavotte, minuet. Then we hear a polka, with Polish dance. Siciliana, which is the dum-da-dum-da-dum rhythm. Okay. A bolero. We think we know that. These are some Spanish dances. Next, Seguidilla, tango, and rumba. So all of these are very different than the 5 preludes. Those are more melodic, and these are all very rhythmic. And they're all very short, about a minute long, and extremely appealing. She really gets the rhythmic profile right. And I really enjoyed this part of the disc the best, because I like dessert the best. Let's just face it. Okay, that's my favorite. Yeah, the program to me kind of seemed like a little bit of a meal: appetizer, main course, dessert. You know, sort of the variations would be the appetizer, the preludes would be the main meal, and the dances would be the dessert. Anyway, if you like the harp, this is really something to listen to. It's a nice discovery. You get to discover some new music. And you get to hear that wonderful sound of the harp. It's well recorded as well. It's fairly close, actually, but the harp is one of those odd instruments to record. How far away from it do you get when you record it? It puts out a lot of harmonics, and you just hear them like buzzing all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she has a lovely harp sound, and I was completely unfamiliar with any of these works, as I would be with, probably 90% of the harp repertoire.
Yeah, me too. Well, it was a whim for me. I was curious about it. I just decided to do it.
But I found them really interesting and enjoyable. They're dreamy and kind of ethereal. And there's some passages that are extremely quiet. So,
the preludes. That's a beautiful element of the harp, and that really, hats off to the engineer for picking that up too in such like nice, sort of detail, like tonal detail. You still hear the sound really well.
So it's kind of a mixed bag for me in that when you have one instrument, whether it's harp or harpsichord, you're locked into the the limitations of the one instrument. But there's a lot of variety in these compositions, and there's in her playing, within the what the instrument can do, there is a lot of variation in the timbre and color. And I'm not familiar with the techniques on the harp, but I'm sure in the way of plucking and that. So there are, different spectrums of, colors and things that emerge from here within what the harp can do. However, if you listen to this, kind of like, listening to all of those harpsichord things, and then here you might find, you're sort of sprouting some wings or a halo or something here. See, this is another recording you might want to break up into different sections at a time, just because you get into that world of the harp sound and you really get sort of teleported to that astral plane, and you're sort of zoning out. But it's very lovely, and as far as the playing seems to be top notch. But the compositions are very interesting too. But I find them a little bit sort of mesmerizing, and so I got like zoned out for a bit, and I missed some things on the first listening, and then I picked them up when I would start. It was, start at a new point in the middle and then pick that. Oh, okay. Because by that time I was sort of, cloud floating the time before, just because it's all harpy and angelic and like that. But I don't listen to harp that much. So, this was kind of fun. And
I do want to mention to listeners, though, Russ is saying, he felt angelic and stuff like that. But I don't know that this is a terribly relaxing recording. So I don't know that you want to. I mean, if you want to get in your bath and listen to it, I think that would work pretty well. I mean, it's a nice recording for relaxing in the bath. But if you're really trying to forget a lot of things, you're getting a massage or something like that, I don't know. I think there might be a few bits of it that aren't quite, that are going to grab your attention. And,
it's not all,
it's not a new age album. Let's just put it like that.
I'm talking about in terms of, just basically the instrument, but there's a lot of variety in there. And then, even in the suite of dances, they're all distinctly identified by the particular rhythms, and the articulations are clear and well played. So it does take you through a different landscape of things on the harp.
Yeah, check that out. It's good.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, a little off the beaten path there. And this is a composer whose music I knew nothing about, and now I've got some of that in my brain cells, and I'm a better man for it.
Good experience.
Yeah. Okay, what do you got for us there?
Oh, and well, in the jazz domain this week, this was sort of a roulette wheel of spin the dial and see what comes up, because
that's my whole life.
well, yeah, I mean, there are some recordings I'm waiting to come out.
Right. I do that too. I got some classical stuff I'm waiting for.
And so I said, well, let's see what's out there that I have no idea and no preconceptions about. And so that's what I did. I spun the dial of new releases and picked up an international kind of random choices of things that either looked interesting or were highly touted from other sources, which I should have known better in this case. I think my random choices.
Well, why not? You know, I make random choices all the time, but I usually know something about the artist first, but not always.
These are three completely new to me, and so I thought it's a good chance for discovery and hopefully give some, recommendations if I found anything good. And it's a mixed bag.
That's what I thought.
The first one I really enjoyed. This is called Sideslip by Alex Western King. That's a hyphenated last name, Western King. I don't know why it's hyphenated, since he's a gentleman. I don't know the origin of that. And it's
kind of those kind of names.
I guess they do. It's kind of interesting.
A royal family or something. I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of a cool thing. You know, who are you? I'm a Western King.
Yeah.
I mean, what could be cooler than that, right? The Western King. And this is on the Ubuntu label. But Western King is a up and coming player on the London jazz scene on the tenor saxophone. And apparently he started out on clarinet in his youthful period, and then he switched over to saxophone later, and he's shared the stage with a lot of world-renowned musicians, Cleo Lane, Alec Dankforth, among others, and he's a regular at Ronnie Scott's Late Late Show, and he's performed at Royal Albert Hall and a number of other venues, and this is his debut album as a solo artist. And so I thought, well, London has a really good jazz scene, and this would be interesting to check out. And he describes this album as a meeting point between his love of straight ahead bebop and the chaos and fragility of free jazz. And it turns out, it's a pretty good description. He's here with his group that features on piano Sam Leake, on bass Johnny Wickham, drums Jay Davis, and we've got a guest on one track, trumpet of James Copus. And I really like this recording. It starts out with a tune called Make Way. And this is kind of a medium swing tune with some stop time behind the sax when it comes in. And this is an original composition, but it has a jazz standard-like quality. I don't know if you remember the tune Tangerine. Stan Getz and other people played it. It's sort of reminiscent of that. And right from this first tune, you'll get a sense of Western King's sort of sax concept. He has a really full tenor tone, but he has some edge. Maybe like Charlie Rouse, player like that. So it's kind of an appealing tone that he has. And he has a solo here that's really relaxed, but he adds some very reedy overtones when he gets in the upper register. You can tell he's worked on his altissimo playing up high, and he has really good control there. And so he can add some nice tension to his solo when he chooses to go up high. After the sax solo, there's a nice light swinging piano solo. And then the swing tune ends with a kind of minor vamp that changes to sort of a Latin-y percussion contrast for a few bars. So it's a nice, tune. It's evocative of things of the past, but he shows his unique character. The next tune, number 2 on the recording, is called Disorder Reordered. And here he ventures a little bit more modern. It's got a kind of short, angular, very angst-inducing melody that he introduces some like low honks in, and there's a very syncopated rhythm section backing. After the introduction of the very brief theme, it goes quickly into kind of a bass and drum jam, and then the melody restatement comes out, and then there's a piano solo. There's kind of a lot of more modern angst from dissonant chords here, and the drums and bass really help push the tension as the solo develops to a climax. And then they come back to that riff that's repeated, and Western King adds like kind of a really angry solo on top, and then back to the melody, and it ends. So sort of, Disorder Reordered as a title. He's sort of aiming for sort of a reconstruction of something in a compact kind of modern thing. And so it's a very big contrast to the first track. Number 3 is called Dark Space. And that's what it sounds like at the beginning anyway. We get a very dark, spacey bass intro that fits this title idea. The sax joins in really tenderly with a softer tone on the melody, showing a different kind of personality side of his playing. And then the piano and drums finally join in, and the melody is repeated with a really nice ballad treatment. And then the sax solo alternates between kind of tender fluid lines and then some tension with controlled squawks until the sudden ending. So he's really good at adding things in the upper register with some like overtone squawks with reed things but he keeps it all in really good control. He has a really good technique here. Number 4 is called Inner Eye. And this has a nice, pretty minor arpeggio piano opening. And then the sax joins in a kind of rubato, so free rhythm sort of statement. And it's really mournful, the tone he gets. Then the bass and drums enter, adding a lot of weight behind that. And then they sort of develop a slow ballad tempo here. And then Western King really rings out the emotion in the legato phrases on this tune. He really shows how his phrasing and kind of passionate, emotive style can work here. And he has a really pretty vibrato, which I really noticed. That's kind of nice. There's a really well-constructed piano solo on this tune with cascading lines and really well-spaced intervals. Nice solo. And then a relaxed bass solo. It's got just enough rhythmic tension and articulation to keep the tune going along. Then the sax returns for the final melody statement. And when he gets to the end, he shows, again, some more of his high register tone control on the ending. So interesting tune. 5 is the title track, Sideslip. And this is a nice kind of hard bop chromatic melody line. And the trumpet joins in here with the sax. And they're playing together is sort of accented by the rhythm section here. And then when the trumpet comes out to the first solo, it's really pushed by some driving cymbal in the drums. And he takes his time building this up. He starts out really calmly, gradually adds tension with some chromatic phrases and some forays into the high register. And it's a really long trumpet solo. It's a really extended solo. So he paces himself well here. And then when he gets to the end of the solo, the sax joins in together on a line. I don't know if they had planned this out or picked it up. And then they continue playing together for a while before the sax takes over, sort of gets the baton in the relay and goes on the solo. And then here, Western King sort of alternates between his high and low register things. And he works in some really interesting variety of bluesy figures and then outside of the chord sort of figures, but he keeps it all integrated by really swinging hard. He has a really nice swing concept that I liked. Then the horns join in together for a new funky line, and that sort of trades off with bass and piano stop timing behind the drums. And then there's sort of a new melody theme that comes back, different from the original melody. And then there's a drum solo and one more time back to the original melody. So yeah, kind of interesting composition and, hard bop-ish, but, pushing the boundaries a bit with freedom with the harmonies. The 6th track is called Toe the Line. And this is a relaxed, a very standard sounding, slow swinging tune. The piano takes the first solo after the melody, and there's a cool kind of descending ending in there. And then sax comes in for a solo, and he really swings a lot on this one. And what I liked on this tune is his phrasing. He sort of crosses over the normal phrase lines of melody where you would expect phrases to end, but he keeps going and creates his own new sort of compositional phrases, and he feels really completely in control. I thought it's a really mature style of soloing before he comes back to the melody. And then the last tune is called The Long Road, and this is a kind of fun, mysterious modal melody, and it has these very menacing low piano and bass kind of backing tones to it. And then inside the melody that he's playing on sax, there's this chromatic dropping line in the sax that's kind of unique and stands out. And then when he comes to the sax solo that starts first, he gets off to a really harmonically free but very rhythmic solo that's just over the drums. So the piano and bass drop out, so he's left to his own harmonic devices, so he can take a lot of liberties here. And then the bass comes back in for the piano solo that follows. And the piano really follows the modes that are outlined in the melodies. So there's a really modal exploration here. And he includes a lot of really cool, punchy left-hand chords. And then, these really searching right-hand figures. So really nice piano soloing on this album. And so overall, I was really impressed. I thought it's a fine debut album. There's a nice mixture of material. As he says, based in bebop, I would actually call it, hard bop or post bop. And then a great interplay between the musicians. The rhythm section is very tight. And Western King himself, he shows a unique kind of personal tone on the sax. I thought he has, this warmth with a bit of an edge, a really good high register control, and he can use these kind of overtones and squawks whenever he wants to just add some touches. But he has a mature playing style. I don't know how old he is. I assume he's kind of young, looking at his photo there. And his style is rooted in the past, but he has enough of his own ideas, and he has this, kind of a probing nature into, free jazz zone, and he's not afraid to go outside and also do some things harmonically to explore that keeps it kind of creative. And I thought it was entertaining, energetic, a nice balance of pretty things and also edgy. And I recommend this recording. It was enjoyable. I was surprised.
Yeah, when I listen to these recordings that you recommend, I never really know what I'm going to get, so I'm just kind of wide open, ready for it to hit. And this week it was a really tiring week, and I listened to this, and it's a pretty edgy recording for the most part, not entirely. And I was kind of like, I don't really want to be hearing this week, But it was the playing was fantastic. It was really hard. There's a lot of like kind of hard bop kind of things to it. The playing was great. And then I mentioned this to you, and you said, "Oh, well, listen to it again," and I did. But this time I knew what I was going to hear, and it kind of settled in a bit. I did like it. Okay, but it's an edgier kind of sound. I'd recommend it, but just know what you're getting into first. It's not hard to listen to, but it's just kind of
it's a nice nice balance.
After all my harp and harpsichord this week, this was kind of like a big jolt going into.
Yeah, but if this guy is exemplary of what's happening on the London jazz scene, this sounds hot. I mean, love to go see this guy live. I'm sure it would be really thrilling. He's creative. He's got, like I say, one foot rooted in the past. He's got his own thing. And what I really liked about him is he can really swing through this, challenging kind of repertoire. He's got the concept of the rhythm down, which is what I'm always, as we talked with Mike Ladon, when he kept saying that swing thing. And, after that, I looked at some of the things he had said like a decade before, that were sort of controversial, and he was sort of critical of, Europeans sort of saying, now jazz is our thing too, and whatnot. And, in our present, PC and kind of comments about cultural appropriation and all this other kind of nonsense. None of that matters if you play the music or do whatever you're doing right, if you understand it. And, with jazz, that means, you've got to have that rhythmic feel. It doesn't mean you have to be American or black or anything. What it means is you have to understand that music and be into it. And so when I see people from, other countries or cultures that have that, then, that's really satisfying. And this guy definitely has his good swing, and he has the tradition, and he also has something cool of his own. And really cool.
Yeah, I think when your music becomes like international the way jazz has now, I think that's something to be really happy and proud about. I mean, you acknowledge its origins in Black America, of course, and then in America, but then it becomes everybody's. Music always does that. It brings people together. It's always trying to expand out and find a new audience. And we wouldn't want to be relying only on Americans to listen to jazz or play jazz, because then we would not have any music left. Yeah, it should be celebrated by anyone who can get it. There are a lot of good jazz artists in America still. I mean, still. I think that's still the center. Sort of like how many Europe listeners is still the center of classical music. I think America still. Yeah, we've lost listeners. I think Europe has a pretty big jazz audience, which is kind of what's nice about them. So does Japan, by the way. There's quite a jazz audience out here. People listen to it. Yeah, jazz. Jazz gets mocked on like American TV shows, but that's it. You don't hear that in Europe. You don't hear that in Japan. No. Or anywhere else jazz is played in Asia. No. And so we're going to stay in Europe for number 2. Another artist I had never heard of, and I saw this, and I was just drawn in by the title because it has 2 things that drew me in. It says organ power, ! Exclamation point. Yeah, and so I thought, well, organ, I'm hooked, and then exclamation point. I like the organ too. Yeah, and we're both suckers for organ, and so I said, we're also both suckers for exclamation points, aren't we? You put an exclamation point in the title, we'll suddenly want to hear it. Yeah, and so this is on the Fresh Sound label by the alto saxophonist. I'm probably French listeners, forgive me. I'm going to butcher these pronunciations. I think it's Gaël Horellou. Unless you can correct me. Yeah, here. Yeah, Gaël probably. Yeah. Horellou, I guess. Horellou, yes. The French alto saxophone player, and who was born in 1975. And he has a classical and jazz background, and his career goes back to 1992. And he's recorded with lots of international artists as well, including Jeremy Pelt, Marcus Miller, Rodney Green, Jaleel Shaw, and the great American tenor sax player Eric Alexander, who also records with our favorite organ player, Mike Ladon. So I thought, well, let's check this out. And so he's comprised an organ-focused recording here with himself, Horellou on alto sax, Pierre Drevet on trumpet, Simon Girard on trombone, and the organ here is handled by Fred Nardin, and we have Antoine Paganotti on drums. And this is a really fun recording. I'm glad I picked this. I liked it. This will put you in a good mood for sure. The first piece is called Le Hagiton. And you're off to a really nice groove right from the start here, a real swinging tune. And they really use the horns to great effect on this whole album. And this one starts out with a great horn riff. It modulates a lot. It moves around. I wouldn't maybe call it modal for sure, but the riff moves around. And Horellou comes out with the first solo. And right away you get this taste of his unique sound. It's a kind of centered alto tone, but it has a nervous edge to it. And he's able to play really fluid lines, but there's this sort of angst in his sound that's appealing. He creates a lot of tension. After the sax, there's an organ solo, and he keeps the bass. Well, all the bass on this album is done by the organ foot pedals, which I should mention is really heavy in the mix. Yes, so, I noticed that too. It's actually hard to distinguish when the tone changes because it just seems to like blend into like the next one. It's kind of like,
yeah, it's like house music.
You're
almost
hearing that a lot, you know. Yeah.
You know, it's not a bad thing, but it's very, it's very big in the mix with the organ. And then the horns come back in and with this riff, and there's some backing for the solos, and they trade it off with the drums, and they come back to the melody. It's a nice arrangement. This whole album has really good arrangements for the horns. They maybe be a bit over arranged in some places on, depending on what you like, but they're all prominently featured here. The second track is called Nathania, and here the whole tune starts off with a kind of bass pedal ostinato riff in the organ. Then the horns come in and they play a kind of like a minor keyed chorale together. And then there's an interesting rhythm that develops and the chord changes are really interesting on this tune. Horellou takes the first solo and he really mixes up some bluesy licks while following the interesting chord changes in this tune. They're very interesting. They must be fun to solo over. The trumpet solo's next, and he keeps it mostly mellow with a bit of a bluesy ending, and then the organ solo's here too. And then the horns all come back, and the trumpet adds a few kind of improvisational licks on top of that. So kind of a unique tune here. 3 is really a lot of fun. It's called Twistin'. And
this is the one that really grabbed me, and I really enjoyed this record. It's really good. Yeah.
There's a horn intro, and then there's a really funky organ riff that's offset with the bass pedals, and then everything is really playing rhythmically in sort of opposition with each other in the organ, and it's great. So it really chugs along. The horns play a really bluesy melody line together. And then one of the highlights of this album for me, the first solo here is trombone. And boy, his trombone is like so dirty. When you hear this, like you're going to need a shower after this trombone. On any time he plays this solo, he just rips in with these really dirty licks, and he's growling and swinging. Really nice trombone concept. Anytime he plays on here, sax is up next, and Horelou's solo has some really cool staccato phrases added in, and then the organ chord comes in for a bit of a jam before the melody returns. Fourth track is called Interlude in Blue. And this one has a kind of a slow minor tune with an even beat, and it starts on organ and the horns come in, and there's a sad minor melody, but it sort of changes into this hopeful rising major phrase that then turns bluesy. It's a lot of twists and turns in this melody that's kind of intriguing. And then we get another trombone solo here. It was really great, a really mournful kind of really voice-like character full of exasperation in the trombone. I really liked his voice-like quality in this solo. And then the organ comes in really high, adding some gospel on top. And then Horellou comes in for a sax solo, and he keeps it really bluesy all the way through. And then the horns all come back in, and they go out to the end together. So this one is another really good track. Then we have track 5, Roos or Rouse.
I think it's about Charlie Rouse, huh?
Could be about Charlie Rouse, it's possible. Yeah. This starts with a bass riff with some really mysterious horn noodling before they all join in on a repeating riff. And then they fall into this kind of minor bluesy swing. Nice horn arrangement here. The sax solo's first, and he does some really nice outside of the chord phrases over the static 1 chord section before it hits the kind of shifting chord changes section, where he plays some really sweet lines over that, building up some tension. Really nice rhythmic phrases, bluesy lines, and some high edgy notes. For Horellou himself, this is one of his nicer solos on the album. It really puts all things together. You can see that he's a really good improviser here. The organ solo starts out subdued and dark, and then it turns kind of bluesy and mysterious, for a while and back to bluesy again. You'll notice that he keeps his tone very straight. This is very different from Michael O'Donnell's playing that we look to. He uses a lot of the Leslie and the effects. He keeps his stops in a more of a pure kind of tone thing, maybe a bit too much for my taste.
Let's just mention the Leslie is the speaker that the organ sound comes out of on a Hammond B3 organ. So
right,
just for listeners who didn't hear the earlier episode when we explained that.
And see, it can get that sort of pulsating kind of sound to add tension to the organ sound, but you don't get that a lot on this recording. It could just be, the way his concept is. And then track 6 is called Minority. Now, this is a cover tune of, I wouldn't call it a standard, but it's been played before by Gigi Grice. And it was also recorded and made probably more famous by Bill Evans, although I like the original recording because it features one of my favorite trumpet players, Richard Williams, who is sort of obscure, but I really love his solo recording and even more his work with Yusef Lateef. So this is a really interesting tune. And the way they treat this is the pick surprise tune for me, but you'll have to listen to see what's so cool about it. Compared to the original, recording or Bill Evans' version, and then when you listen to this, they'll start the tune actually in 6 beats. So the intro is in a 6-beat rhythm, and then it will alternate between a 6-beat Latin beat with a 4-beat swing section, which the original recording does. So it's one of these, it was kind of a thing in the 60s to have like these tunes. You'll hear it a lot in Art Blakey tunes and other things where you'll be in a straight rhythm and then it will alternate, with a swing beat. And so it builds up this great sort of tension and then sort of a release into the swing, which is cool. But what happens here is they do that into Horellou's solo, and eventually they settle into the swing time. And when the other solos come in, they stay in swing. But in Horellou's solo, they keep switching between the 6-beat even theme and then the swing thing. And I'm believing that it was improvised and keeping him on his toes. And so if you listen to how he navigates this switch in meter flawlessly while improvising over this, it's really, intense to me. I had to listen to it a few times to see that. But he really shows his chops here. And so to me, this was kind of a highlight for the improvised parts of the album. And he keeps it completely swinging along for all of that. And he burns through this solo really well. So this is one of the better sax solos on the whole album. And the organ plays kind of an agile solo. And there's nice thing added to here is kind of composed horn unison soli line. So soli, when instruments play together on the same pitch, and it shows a lot of dexterity, and there's some nice drum breaks thrown in here too. And so, a really good track and awesome soloing by Horellou. His sax technique and tone comes through here. Track 7 is called GK. It's kind of a low, slow, brooding organ intro. And the horns come in gently on this nice ballad. The trumpet takes the first solo. It keeps it really mellow, but adds some flourishes here and there. Horellou comes in next, and he uses his tone to add some tension with some ascending lines. And there's a kind of mellow organ solo. The horns come back in with the melody to the end. Track 8 is called Funky Ruffle. And this has a really funky groove.
Good title.
The horn riffs and organ chord punches are really cool. And then the sax comes in, adds another kind of phrase on top of things, and a really bluesy groove develops. And then thankfully we get another trombone solo here, and he really spits out some hard articulation on the kind of turnaround that comes the first time, and then the next time it comes around, you get some like snarling, nasty kind of things. So this is like the kind of trombone I really like. It's the appeal of bluesy trombone playing. Horellou comes up next with the sax solo that sort of alternates sort of happy major themed lines with bluesy lines. And then he adds some really kind of slurpy, that's the word I wrote, slurpy articulation phrases where he uses his tonguing and reed facility to some interesting effect. There's some riffing over a drum solo, the horns riffing over that, and then everyone comes back with another nice arrangement of the melody for the end. And then the album ends with a tune called Palace Special, which is kind of a gospel-y exploration here. It starts with a kind of really dreamy organ intro, and here he does use the Leslie effect, so you get some pulsating organ tone here. Then it develops into a slow bluesy groove with the horns answering the organ phrases. The sax takes the lead for a bit, and the horns reply to the sax, so you get that call and response. It's a really African-American music form here done by the French. Everyone gets mellow and gospel-y for a while before the sax comes back for a solo, and he keeps it really bluesy while the other horns back him up. The organ kind of tinkles away in the high register over the horns for a bit, and then the sax returns with the melody and builds up into the high register where everyone else builds too. And then there's a sax break with a nice cadenza and a final. I was hoping, I'm not hoping, but I was picturing kind of amen cadence, but
right.
Plagal kind of thing, but no, there's a bluesy kind of ending. And so overall, very uplifting recording. It'll put you in a good mood. The tunes are interesting with nice horn arrangements, and Horellou himself has some really fine sax solos and playing, both technique-wise and stylistically. He has some bite, and he can do a variety of styles really well. And then Gerard's dirty trombone adds a lot to this mix.
Just as long as it's not a rusty trombone, just stay away from that.
But this one will put you in a good mood.
Yeah, it put me in a good mood. I enjoyed this a lot. It was kind of it was a fun album. Just kind of upbeat, and so the standout track for me was the third one. I'm on the wrong album now. Twistin', that one.
Oh, Twistin', yeah. That
was
rhythm is
fantastic.
just
really stood out for me.
infectious. Yeah.
That is really infectious. Infectious jazz tune. Now you want to go right to that, listener, on the list and give it a listen, because we don't normally think of jazz tunes as being infectious, but this really has everything like that a pop song should have anyway.
That one's really good.
It's a good album too. The variety of organ sounds that he got were, from the Leslie speaker, and then like just not using the Leslie speaker at other points was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah,
I kind of was intrigued by that. I do like sort of timbral sort of subtleties and things like that. So
yeah,
I kind of grabbed onto that.
It was good, and I like that. There's no bass player on the album; it's all the foot pedals. And
the organist does all that.
Yeah.
He's
so
a busy
interesting.
Guy, the organist.
Yeah, really good. I became a fan of Horellou, and I really like the trombone player. And really cool French jazz. Check it out. I'm really interested to see what all these.
I think this was my favorite jazz recording of the week.
Okay. And then, the final one, I saw this recording had received much praise in the jazz press, and on the surface, I thought, it's got to be worth checking out.
It's kind of a cool album cover.
Yeah, it's a cool album cover, and it's called Sankofa, and it's by the Brazilian pianist Amaro Freitas, and it's on the Far Out Recordings label, and so it features Freitas on piano, Jean Elton on bass, and Hugo Medeiros on drums. And so this, I believe, is his third trio album. This group had Sangue Negro in 2016, and then Racif in 2018, which arrived on a sort of high acclaim sequence of recordings. And then this was billed as his new album, Sankofa, a spiritual quest into the forgotten stories, ancient philosophies, and inspirational figures of Black Brazil. So I thought, oh, well, that's going to be intriguing. However, I was not so intrigued by this album. The first track is Sankofa, and it sort of sets the kind of pattern for what they're working with here. You get a very hypnotic kind of simple riff on the piano over a sparse, even beat. And he does... Yeah, go ahead.
I want to open up that word hypnotic, because hypnotic to me means it's like pop music. It repeats, and that's really what's happening. You're getting a lot of repeating patterns here. So this is sort of it's almost like a jazz pop sort of fusion thing. Right. It's kind of like more like pop sort of, I don't want to say pop, but, pretty much repeating patterns with these kind of pretty cool jazz chops on top of it. But overall, we'll go on. Let's see what you have to say.
So what it turned out to be is sort of a dissection of rhythmic elements more than anything else to me. And I understand the rhythmic importance in Brazilian music. And it could just be, the things that I listen for in music that I didn't find here a lot to be completely enthralled with this. But you'll get the basic approach that they take here from the first tune. And so they'll start with this kind of riff, and then he adds harmonizations, which are quite interesting sometimes. And then there'll be an introduction of a new riff, sort of an exposition of the first one that modulates. And then there's a new repetitive figure that kind of emerges, and he takes some harmonic movement below, and then the rhythms change and the meters change, and then in this first track, then the right hand figure sort of metamorphosizes into different variations until it returns to the original riff and mellows out. And so I sort of saw where they were going, somewhat interesting sort of development of it, and then. But that's sort of what the whole album seems to be based on for me. Track 2 is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Aye. And here you get a kind of alternating intervallic riffs that set off over a pulsating rhythm. And then it sort of moves to the middle register of the piano, and the piano solos with rhythmic figures, alternating kind of with smooth lines. It stays really funky. And then he adds some sort of kind of dissonant, not really dissonant, but there's some harmonies with like second intervals that add tension in there. And then there's some interval trills and chromatic lines and sweeps, and before it gets kind of mellow again with some simple chords, and then the riff idea comes back in like a rolling kind of fashion. And by now I saw that there's not going to be a lot of like melodic development with this. This is kind of focused on doing some rhythmic things. Track 3 is called Bakwakwa. And then here you get kind of a repeated, then alternating left-hand tones over a busy kind of, or right hand over a left hand and bass part. And then the right hand gets busy together. There's kind of interesting, if you're interested in rhythmic things, this album has a lot of things to explore. There's kind of like a chasing 7-beat line cascades in the piano and bass that alternate with chord sections. Then it transforms again, and then the rhythm keeps changing until the final chords. So that, they keep dissecting and redirecting these different rhythms here. Track 4 is called Villa Bella, and this has kind of a music box almost quality to the piano melody start. And then the melody changes, and it's played simply with lots of space and sparse bass and drums. And he moves the key around in the melody, but the bass stays in the same kind of original progression. So you get sort of a multi-tonality kind of thing going on here. This one's really one of the more mellow explorations on the tune, on the recording. 5 is Kazumba, And this is a busy riff of really complicated rhythms that starts out. Then the rhythm is moved around the piano and bass in different registers with lots of variations. The bass explores some different intervals and rhythms for the backing. Then the piano kind of slows and plays figures in the upper register. There's some kind of interesting jangling percussion sounds and other effects in the background. And eventually they return to the original riff to finish it up. 6 is Batucada. And this is like a one chord and drum rhythmic play that starts out. Then the piano and bass get kind of busy with the complex rhythmic figures that repeat, and they really transform into almost a trance-like state before getting really frantic, and the piano starts pounding and with the drums too. 7 is Malakoff. This is a chord sequence over snare drumming that has some alternating with a busy rhythmic section that takes over. And midway through, there's a really kind of angular sounding, I don't know what he's using here. It sounds like an electric piano that's switched to. And this is a really complex solo full of difficult lines and rhythms, maybe the most adventurous kind of take on the piano solo here. And then the final tune on the album is a contrast to all of these. It's Nascimento for Milton Nascimento, who he has played with in the past. And here you get something a bit more melodic. It's a more conventional kind of minor melody that's played sparsely. It's hauntingly pretty.
This was the most appealing track to me.
Yeah, appealing. And so for me, anyway, despite the gushing reviews, I didn't really find much to appeal to me here. I could appreciate that, Freitas is exploring kind of ideas from his heritage and Brazilian rhythms and things, but and there's a lot of intricate exploration of the rhythms, but not a lot melodically to pull me in. And I found a lot of the repetition of the rhythmic figures kind of tedious rather than interesting, even with the variations that are developed. So he has a unique approach. I'll give him that, but it's not for me. So
yeah, I think it's like the circularity of the kind of track, the patterns in the each individual track that kind of made me kind of lose interest. Like I sort of wanted it to go somewhere, you know. But he's a pretty fantastic pianist, we have to say. He's got some serious technique in there. Just some of those cascading scales that he does is pretty amazing. The
things he can coordinate with both of his hands and the rhythmic sort of figures and variations, and then the way that they can keep the rhythm section together and develop them. Yeah, that's kind of impressive. But musically, stylistically, for me, it's probably not something I'm going to listen to again.
I wasn't really too into this either. I've heard records like this before, where the rhythm, this happens a lot in American, even pop, funk. It's just this kind of rhythm that just keeps repeating. These patterns that keep repeating, and I think when I'm listening to jazz, I'm kind of looking for it to open up a bit. Just I want more space.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there you go. Our 4th of July. I just want to say I finished my Liberty Ale and I feel liberated.
It's good to be liberated. Yeah.
Yeah. On this 4th of July, Independence Day, that we are recording on. This will go out after that.
And yet they're going to celebrate that tomorrow on Monday. So it's a 3-day weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I guess that's, they would do that.
Yeah, okay. They do that. Any excuse to get a 3-day weekend,
Yeah. Well, I have no issues with that.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, we have a 4-day weekend coming up here in Japan at the end of July, the 22nd and 23rd.
Yes.
It's like a one-time only holiday to mark the opening of the Olympic Games. I doubt they're going to keep this for once the games are over.
What do we have? We have
that weekend
Marine
off.
Day and Sports Day. Yeah.
Sports Day is later, and Sports Day is
the 23rd.
November. It's November, isn't it?
No.
They moved it this year because of the Olympics.
Right.
Because the original Sports Day was in November. I think it was November 3rd.
Yeah.
And the reason it was November 3rd is because that's when the Tokyo Olympics started in 1960, so they just call it Sports Day to commemorate that day.
Yeah.
But it was in November.
Yeah.
Why didn't they do that this year? You know, because it's hot here in the summer. Right?
Yeah, it's not. You don't want to have a sports day now. You know, a couple hours ago, I was grilling some steaks, and it was about 6 o'clock, and that was 31 degrees Celsius, and it was about 85% humidity. And it was, but yet, you know, today was completely cloudy. The sun poked through a couple times, you know, so you have this.
You just imagine what it's going to be like in August.
It's just stepping outside is, you know, sort of going into a sauna. It's not really the kind of environment you think, let's do some sports, you know, not unless you want to collapse and not be able to breathe. And so.
Right.
Not
What's
really
crazy too is next year is the World Cup soccer tournament is being held in Qatar, in sort of
oh wow,
I guess the Middle is that in the Middle East? I'm like, but the temperatures that are reached there are just astronomically high. I can't imagine, because I've been to 2 World Cups and they're really fun. It's like this big world party, but somehow I can't imagine that atmosphere being created in that kind of heat. I
guess if you stay out of the sun, you know, which in Japan it doesn't get that hot, but the humidity, especially like where we are, the humidity is unbelievable. I mean,
it's pretty hot here. Yeah.
The sun will go down, and it's 10 at night. It'll still be 30 degrees Celsius with 90% humidity, and so it's sort of like living in a soup. And it doesn't taste good. It's not a good soup. So
it doesn't feel good on your body, that's for sure.
No, it doesn't.
I personally like to eat soup, not wear it.
I don't want to wear my soup.
I don't want to wear my soup.
Well, this is an interesting program this week. I mean, we took some chances and pulled out some things on kind of a lottery, and but I was happy with the discoveries I got, and not everything was completely satisfying, but I hope that this has been a good year for releases on all genres, but I hope that continues through the summer. I hope things don't sort of die out because people feel, now we can get out and do things, and so they're going to hold off on new releases or something. I hope.
In classical music, July is always a big release month, but August tends to slow down a bit. But then once September, October, then the awards start coming in. The Gramophone Awards are, I think, are in September. Well, they don't announce them until October, but they have they do their short list. So we'll talk about that a little bit when that comes out. And then we get towards the end of the year and do all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know there are some things I definitely know that are coming out that I'm looking forward to. Hopefully they'll come out on streaming right away, and they won't do that teasing 1-track release kind of thing. There should be some interesting things in the next few weeks.
That's for the kids. You can't do that with us adults. We're listening. We
can't do that to adult music.
Yeah.
That's right. So this has been episode 21 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind.
Do you want to tell the people to leave a review and all that stuff?
Well, I said that at the beginning, but please do.
Oh, you did?
Like,
I missed it.
Subscribe. Okay. Please leave a review. Send us a comment or contact us at adultmusicpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com. And we'll be back next week with episode 22. You'll find it every morning, Monday morning, Japan time, probably Sunday night where you might be. But as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we'll have a special interview edition coming out early on Friday morning, Japan time, Thursday evening, U.S. time, with Gil Rose on the frontier of modern American orchestral music. So you want to catch that for sure. So we'll have 2 episodes coming out for the upcoming week. So we'll see you again next week for episode 22 with more new music on the Adult Music Podcast.